welcome to Liquid New Hampshire. I'm on with my guest Brian Moon, founder of the Socrates Cafe. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Dominic?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a while since I've had an interview on here,
It has.
so I'm glad. It's been a little bit. I try to space out the posts so that I'm
Yeah.
consistently posting.
That's good.
You founded Socrates Cafe, I know, before you moved here. Well, when did you start it, and how long has it been in operation?
I actually took over. Um, I started going to one down in Jacksonville in 2016,
Okay.
or 2018. And I took over it after COVID hit. There was a break. We didn't really meet up or anything like that. It's always hard to do it online just
Mm,
because the pauses,
yeah.
everything gets kind of muddled and mixed up in those. And so we took a break because of COVID, and then we came back, and I just kind of, I don't want to say usurped, but slowly I became the de facto leader of the group.
Well, that's how
Um,
you do it,
that
right?
exactly,
You
just
just
slowly
stay
accumulate the
until you
power.
become in
Yeah,
charge.
yeah. It was a mutual thing. The original person that founded it was going off to college to get her working on her master's in like medieval studies.
Okay.
So she needed somebody to kind of take and helm the group as she was doing that. So
Is that a thing? You can have a master's in medieval studies?
I want to say she's trying to get a doctorate in it, but yeah, I imagine so. Specifically, like uh, she did several essays on like tapestry work and like tent maidens and stuff like that. I'm not too.
Okay.
I've just heard her talk about it. I'm not too knowledgeable of it on myself. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
What first made you interested in joining a group like this?
So in the brief bit of college that I did, um, uh, I had a philosophy club there that I
Okay.
went to, and it was kind of just a natural extension of that. I was kind of doing both at the same time. I was just always very curious, kind of as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my when I was very young, my mom nicknamed me Wonder Boy because I would start off sentences with "I wonder if," "I wonder that," "I wonder blank."
Okay.
It lasted a brief period of time. So I've always been philosophy, science was kind of my earlier outlet for that, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of just like it could feed me like the answers of things. But as I grew older and as I went to college and kind of found philosophy, because there's no philosophy classes in like high school.
No.
It
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. So that kind of just naturally fed into my curiosity about the world and everything. So
Okay. Yeah, I similarly had like a dispositional curiosity prior to getting interested in any kind of philosophy or politics. I was always I was more edgelordy, I think.
yeah,
I was always the one like in high school. I would make my friends answer like questions they were uncomfortable with. My go-to was like if you know those guys whose job it is to jerk off a horse.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
their
yeah,
whole job.
yeah.
I'm like, is it wrong if he's like kind of happy while he does it? And they
I
would be
see. I
like,
see.
yes, it's wrong. And I would be like, explain why.
Yeah,
And that kind of slowly devolved into being interested in deeper, more serious philosophical questions.
yeah. Like, why are we here?
Exactly.
Yep.
That was for a while, my obsession was like meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then later I got interested in more political philosophy stuff.
Yeah,
But there was like 2 years solid where all I did every day was be like, why am I? Why do I exist? Why am
yeah,
I alive? What is this for?
yeah. I think anyone that's interested in philosophy kind of comes to that question just kind of naturally, unless they have a very strong like faith background. I find, in which
Mm,
case the answer is kind of pre-presented for them. You're here because of like for our context, like Christian,
right.
like um culturally how we exist. It's just like we're here because God made us,
Absolutely.
so
I
yeah.
think I think I had a similar sort of like I think I was like a Christian atheist. I've heard it be
Yeah,
called.
yeah, yeah.
Like I was definitely an atheist, but I was like, but there's this thing called like meaning,
Yeah,
and we definitely have that, but it's not God.
it's not God.
It's
Just
completely different.
It's separate. It's very distinct.
And then at some point that started to collapse for me, and I had an existential crisis.
Well, you tack on a few existential crises when you do this. It's kind of the nature of the game.
It's the name of it's the name of the game. You got to have at least a couple of existential crises.
Otherwise, what are you doing? You know.
I went through a list of some of the backlog because, like, well, I guess I should say, Socrates.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we basically have a roundtable discussion every week about politics and philosophy, primarily philosophy.
Primary philosophy. This group we haven't, because I did Jacksonville from like main host probably for about 4 or so years. And we dipped into more political topics, heavier political topics, even like gun control and abortion.
Okay.
Which were different than our normal fare than what you've participated in. A lot more heated, and I've had to direct the conversation rather than to questions that can't really be answered. Like, but if you're talking about abortion, the question of the soul comes up. So I had to kind of move that to not a question of the soul, because that's a metaphysical question. That's not something, I'm primarily materialist. I've mentioned that in Socrates Cafe a number of times, probably every time I've gone. And to a question of bodily autonomy, which I think is a more interesting question than just if a soul exists and whatnot. Then I think the bodily autonomy question, when it comes to the abortion debate, is the question that needs to be answered.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've done a little bit of on this channel at one point. I did a video about abortion, and my conclusion was I was talking about like moral responsibility, and I'm very loose on moral responsibility as a person. I'm very like, I don't believe very strongly in individual moral responsibility,
What do you
in
mean by
general.
that?
Well, when it came to abortion, I remember I watched a video on the violinist argument.
Yeah, the Judith Jarvis Butler made, in the 70s, yeah.
Exactly. And that argument takes things in a slightly different direction already for abortion. But the video I watched, it ended with a very emotional conclusion. I was watching a Philosophy Tube video.
I'm aware of Philosophy Tube. I'm aware of the video.
Okay, yeah. And towards the end, with the emotional conclusion, I was like, it kind of just seems like the closing argument here is that it's just way too much weight to put on a person to expect a person to behave in a perfectly moral way in that scenario.
Interesting. I never came to that conclusion from the video. I think it was, from my recollection of it, because I haven't seen it in years, I was very much more of a pointing out the hypocrisies of, particularly in that video, Ben Shapiro, because that's who the I guess the character that was very much be doing a pastiche of.
Yes.
That Philosophy Tube was doing a pastiche of in the video. And just kind of pointing out that if you were true to your beliefs, you wouldn't even subscribe to this. That it is not necessarily about bodily autonomy, but rather control of women. Because if you were consistent about your ideas about bodily autonomy, you would be for this. It is a second thing. I think that's what Philosophy Tube was trying to get at. That being said, it's been a while since I've seen the video, so I could be off on this.
That's fair. That's fair. And so that's the direction I went with abortion, which is also a different kind of a direction to go with it, where I'm talking not about the soul or personhood, but I'm questioning the foundational assumption that people should be morally responsible. Like I'm attacking that directly. But yeah, I looked in the backlog of some of our conversations as well.
There's a lot. There's more than I expected.
There was a lot more, yeah, and there was ones that I haven't been a part of because they were before my time too. And I saw one, should we seek pleasure and avoid pain? I'm so upset I missed that.
I think that was our third one that we did up here. Which it was one of the ones that one of the ones in my backlog of stuff that I keep in my notebook. And I thought it was an interesting question to ask because on the surface it's just like, yeah, we should. That's kind of how we're built, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're built to seek pleasure and avoid pain, just kind of biologically. And then what it kind of boiled down to is like, what kind of pain are you avoiding? Because some pain you need to feel
Mm-hmm.
in order to, specifically like emotional pain,
Okay.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
You need to feel in order to get over it. Otherwise, you can't really heal. You know.
Mm.
Um, so it's always more nuanced than I think it will be, especially because one of the reasons why I do this is to get other people's perspective,
Yeah.
to kind of hone and transform my own. Because I don't know everything, obviously, and I don't know what I don't know, and I
Mm.
don't know what I'm wrong on.
That's a good point.
Because like logistically speaking, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of things I'm wrong about. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
The only way I figure that out is by talking to people. At least in my
Absolutely.
worldview, you know?
That's what I try to do. Is like, I think that "don't know what you don't know" is a good phrase for it, because telling people you've got to hear someone else's perspective, they might think they've already heard it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what you haven't heard. And showing up to these groups, I have no idea what people believe. I feel like I
Yeah.
do, and then I show up next week and they surprise me
Yeah.
every time.
People are they can be very idiosyncratic sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a feature rather than a bug of humanity. Um, though it can be very frustrating.
Yeah. I hope it's a feature. I go on online and people seem a lot less idiosyncratic on the internet, I find. People are typed. I feel like you can
Yes,
type people.
I feel like it's easier to fall into groups of types on the
Yeah.
internet, kind of to use your language, where it's very easy to find like-minded communities. Whereas in the real world, you're kind of stuck geographically where you are, unless you're very, very rich, you know,
Right?
and then you can kind of curate who you have around you.
Yeah.
Um, top 1% ultra wealthy, they kind of live almost alien lifestyles to at least me. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I have met I because I spend so much time in different political spaces
Mhm.
talking to people. Like I recently went to a libertarian meeting, and at that meeting there was a guy there who was like pro aristocracy. Um, and he was also
Yeah,
himself quite wealthy.
yeah,
He was the son of some financier of some kind, somebody who moves money around for a living.
yeah,
And he travels, like he doesn't have a place he lives. Like saying where do you live
yeah.
is not the right question for him because he has the money to live everywhere. He can stay in a hotel one place for 2 months, another for 2 months,
That's
another for
crazy
two
to me.
months, and never live in a place.
So I guess the correct question to ask is, "Where's your PO box?"
Yeah, right. And he might have multiple PO
Yeah,
boxes for
probably
all I
does.
know because
Probably
he's
does.
so
Yeah.
rich. And that it is fundamentally different from how the average person has to experience other people in the world, I think.
Yeah, and uh, I think that kind of experience changes you
Yeah,
as a human. I don't see how it can't. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know that I spend a lot of time in my workplace thinking about the politics snippets that
Mhm.
come into my ears,
Yeah.
while for the most part never opening my mouth.
I'm a similar way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm surrounded by little bits and pieces of what I'm hearing about, and I try to take in what people are paying attention to. And most of what people are paying attention to is the current events of whatever's on the news.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's not what I pay attention to in politics for the most part. But I'll hear about like the government shutdown. Like that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing in conversation right now.
Yeah.
And I don't have strong opinions on that because I'm not paying attention to it myself.
I'm fairly tuned into politics, not because I enjoy it, but because I feel like it's necessary. I was
Mm,
briefly very politically active. Now I'm more kind of, I guess, recuperating.
yeah.
You can only be an activist if you yourself are like in a stable position in life.
Mm,
And moving up here has kind of uh, destabilized a lot of support networks I had. So
that
it's kind
makes
of like
sense.
rebuilding. what I had down south in Florida. So yeah,
Absolutely. I've tried. That's what I've always been worried about if I were to move,
yeah,
is losing those like familial support networks, because in the past I have had situations where a job stressed me out
mm-hmm.
to the point where I quit. And then now I'm out of the job for a little bit, but that was okay because I had my family here and I could take a couple months and find another job.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you're halfway across the country.
No, no, you
That's
can't.
how you end up homeless.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, luckily enough, I'm living with my sister now, so I still have that support network. But the larger kind of stuff, that and I kind of got burnt out.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so much you can do, especially because I volunteered at a women's health clinic,
Okay.
and I campaigned for the constitutional amendment in Florida to protect abortion rights, and it lost by 2%.
Oh,
It got 58 instead of 60%.
that's got to be exhausting.
It's exhausting. It was is devastating.
Oh man, and it
Yeah.
got 58 instead of 60.
Yeah, they
it
passed.
needed a super majority.
It's needed a super majority because they changed the law. I think 2 years ago, they added another constitutional amendment to basically be like, hey, and any new constitutional amendments need to have a supermajority. Which I don't know if I don't know if this is correct. I want to say that didn't even pass with a supermajority, which I find deliciously ironic.
There is an irony to that. Yeah.
But yeah, after that, I kind of got a little bit burnt out on the activism. That and I moved, so it's very
Right.
much like I don't really know where the action is over here, and taking time to look into it, I haven't really found any. Not that there's no causes, because I could food bank, I could do all this sort of stuff that I know is around here on the ground, but I don't think I'm up for it yet.
Yeah. And it is in New Hampshire, everything is just a little bit slower. I feel like. No?
I haven't run into that. I mean, I've lived in Florida my entire life, basically, besides the year I've been up here.
Okay.
So, I haven't. The biggest thing I've noticed is the seasonal change, because in Florida you don't really you have hurricane season, and then you have the rest of the year. And here, you definitely have the consistent 4 season change.
Yeah.
And I'm going into my second winter now.
Yeah.
That I've ever experienced. And so far, the trade-off between hurricanes and winter, I would take.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's inconvenient. I'm not gonna say it's easy shoveling snow. I'm not gonna lie. But just the threat of having your house blown away or storm surged, and just kind of dealing with that constant worry is a lot.
That does sound pretty terrifying.
And it's something that I had to live with my entire life.
Yeah.
So, getting snowed in seems preferable, assuming the power doesn't go out, in which case, you need the hurricane supplies.
Right.
Basically.
I've found, for the most part here in New Hampshire, I found it very hard to find groups. That's part of why I'm very excited about Socrates Cafe, even though it is a little group, is because most things that I would find, even on a site like Meetup, I got to go down to Boston.
Yeah, it's being an hour away from probably not over exaggerating when I say one of the world's cities, is kind of aggravating in that way, because when I was first looking, I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to start something when I first moved up here. And it only took me, I moved up here in July, and 3 months, because I started the group last October. So I want to say, if I look, we might even, I think maybe the next one or the past one was probably like technically the 1 year anniversary of Socrates Cafe in New Hampshire, Manchester. Same thing basically. You have you're very different from Florida, whereas we have multiple big cities, and you have Manchester, Concord, and I guess Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So, Whereas, you know, you have Miami, you have Tallahassee, you have St. Augustine. Not in any particular order. I know Tampa is bigger than St. Augustine, but
Right.
just from where I grew up in Jacksonville,
Yeah, I feel
it's
like we have. I mean, Manchester's supposed to be the big city, and maybe it's just because I grew up in it, but to me, it doesn't feel the same.
mm-hmm.
Portsmouth feels a little bit like Boston to me.
Yeah, maybe because
Manchester
it's
doesn't.
Harbor City.
Probably.
Maybe,
That could be
yeah.
it.
But I mean, I like Boston. only been a couple times. Both times actually to see the New England Aquarium.
Oh, yeah.
Which yeah,
Well, that's a good bet.
yeah, yeah. It's always a good time.
I've driven down there to hang out with Less Wrong, which is a group
Mm-hmm.
of like rationalists community, I guess is what they
Mm-hmm.
would call themselves. They mostly talk about tech stuff and AI for the most part.
Yeah, I think you've talked about them before. Yeah.
They were an odd bunch. We've got a weird group of guests sometimes that comes to Socrates. I'm very impressed by some of the credentials sometimes.
Yeah, we attract all types. Even in Florida, there was a variety of people that would show up. To teachers, to like people in deeply embedded in tech industry, to just and a lot of to people like me who are kind of just uh, working class,
Yeah.
and kind of just self taught, or at least, or I guess a magpie would be the best. A
Magpie?
magpie, yeah, someone that just takes little bits of shiny knowledge here or there
Okay.
and builds a nest for themselves. Um, not necessarily classically trained. Like
Yeah.
no. I only took some electives in philosophy
Yeah.
in college. I never actually sought out a degree. So.
I say with both pride and shame that all of my political knowledge comes from YouTube and podcasts.
I mean, that's where a majority of mine political philosophical knowledge comes from as well. That's kind of like, unless you really like reading essays,
Mm.
that's kind of like like reading essays, video essays. One is more accessible than the other,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and it kind of comes down to, especially with uh, philosophy tube, which you mentioned before,
Yeah.
they are making it very easy to consume uh, content like that, just because of how she is doing the
Mm.
set design and I guess storytelling in a sense
Yeah.
through her videos.
Yeah, she and some of those other people in her orbit
Yeah.
were part of my introduction to politics, actually, and that was pre-pandemic, but just a little bit pre-pandemic, and I was unemployed, and I was in a pretty good position at that point to just endlessly watch political content on YouTube.
That can get dangerous.
It got dangerous, but now it's less dangerous. I've
That's
found
good.
a more healthy role for it in my life, I think.
Yeah.
But we've had people like former employee of Google show
Mm-hmm.
up at a discussion where it was very relevant that we were talking about tech, and
We
that was
were, yeah.
very cool. Ex Jehovah's Witness, we've got.
Yeah, that was. I'm trying to think if there was any analog. We did have in the South someone that came out of a cult, though it was, I guess, a minor one. It was very much focused around like a college campus there that had a lot of
Hmm.
like Christian, like Christian-esque preachers that would go to it, and they had
Okay.
very like tight control of the small amount of people there. And we did have one member that was like, yeah, that's kind of, I just kind of got out of that. So
Yeah.
it's you never, and even in the philosophy club I did down in college in Jacksonville, it was very similar, where you got a whole lot of people with different ideas about how um, well, philosophy works and how life works in general, and they
Yeah.
come from all different walks of life.
And I think that's great because I like to think of these sorts of roundtable discussions as hopefully the opposite of a cult.
Yeah, ideally, right? I really hate to be building a cult. I don't think I'm up for it. I don't think I have the personality.
No, I think I've
Um,
got the charisma down.
I think you do have the charisma down. I think if you had a little more focus and the like tenants, you could really nail that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of tenants.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Yeah, so one thing that we talked about was how did COVID change you? That was one of the discussions that we did in Socrates.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great discussion because it bounced between philosophy and personal in quite a cool way.
Yeah, yeah. That was suggested by one of our current members, and it was something that I had thought about doing with COVID for a while. I never really did with the old group because there was a sect kind of within them of like COVID denial, COVID denialists.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
very much, and then we had another group that was very much like took it seriously, took the information seriously and whatnot. And a lot of the times they would come to loggerheads
Mm-hmm.
in different discussions that kind of ventured in or were forced into like, you know, people sometimes have chips on their shoulders
Yeah.
when they come to these things. They want to, even if the conversation's not about it, they'll want to bring it up just to kind of get the idea on it. But that was kind of, it was interesting for me because it kind of made me realize that my experience with COVID was very different than a lot of other people's because I didn't get, or I should say, I was one of the essential workers. I had to work throughout the entire thing. Whereas, like, a lot of people that went, they were like non essential. They had work from home jobs or were previously um, in situations and where they were already working from home, where it was easy to make that transition. Um, but yeah, that was one of the ones that sprung to mind out of the most recent suite that we've done.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was a good one because when you get to that personal experience level, there's more difference, I feel like almost. You get a group of people who are maybe they come into the room thinking they're on the same page, but then their personal life experience might differ somewhat.
Yeah.
And that it makes the conversation very interesting. Um, because I think I remember saying that my experience with COVID was mostly that, like prior to COVID,
Mm-hmm.
I would have called myself something like an accelerationist. Like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted society to collapse. And then after COVID, I was like, no, actually, I want to be more constructive than that. Society collapsing isn't great,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. It turns out a lot of people get hurt when society collapses.
It
Yeah,
turns out,
it turns out.
I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of that before somehow.
Well, it's very much like everyone thinks society collapses and their ideology is going to become the dominant force, or at least hopes
Yeah.
that it becomes the dominant force. And I think very much especially the society that we have in the United States and the West, I think the exact opposite. I think just something meaner
Yeah.
and crueler will take its place. Because I think the meaner and crueler ideologies tend to be willing to do meaner and crueler things in order
Yeah.
to maintain systems of power, you know?
One of my favorite songs is a song by Little Darky, and it's called
Mm.
"Cold Outside."
Yeah.
And that's the double meaning. Is he's saying it's getting cold outside, but he's talking about how during COVID everybody just got a little bit colder and a little bit meaner. It felt like.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm thinking we also did one of the discussions I found really interesting. Also, was the U.S. education system discussion
Mm-hmm.
because I found that people who I had previously thought I knew where they stood and what they believed going in had unexpected positions on
Yeah.
education.
Oh, that was an interesting discussion to me, mainly because kind of puzzling it back. Um, a lot of people were very much like, they liked the idea of public education, but
Mm-hmm.
they're very much against the system that currently exists, which
Yeah.
I think is, if you ask most Americans, I think that's their position. Whereas very much like, we want public education, but we recognize that public education in America is kind of broken at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people kind of have a way to kind of have a solution in their mind. They
Yeah.
know that it's broken, they know it's something that needs fixing, but they don't really see where it can be fixed. And a lot of like charter schools
Mm.
and private schools are kind of not as proposed as an individualistic solution to a society wide problem. Like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what surprised me with a lot of the members talking, where it was very much like, would you want your kid and to go to this kind of school or that kind of school? And it's very much like, well, I would want all children to go to a worthy school to get a good education, you
Yeah.
know? And it's kind of not necessarily about like my personal um, children or like children that like nieces and nephews and stuff like that, but rather it's just like um, what is good for society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the position, for better or for worse, that most people had, and also that I have, is that public education is very, very vitally important, but also that because the way we do education is so poor in this country, I personally would almost want to send my kid to a private school or just some kind of an alternative school,
Yeah.
and that's gonna end up being private in some way
Yeah.
if they're using a different model of education. And I thought that was interesting that, I came at it from what Sudbury model. We had somebody else come at it. His kid goes to another alternative type of
Yeah.
school. I think it was Montessori or something like that.
It wasn't Montessori that came up, but it was a I mean, there's probably hundreds of like different education types, but it was
You
something
know what? It
different.
was
Yeah.
Steiner, right? Rudolf Steiner, I
I
think.
believe so. Yeah, I
And it was
believe
a
so.
Steiner
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And both of those were different perspectives on education. And so
Yeah.
me and him kind of disagreed a little bit.
Yeah.
But then also we were both on the same page about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, a lot of the different education styles is very much same goal, different ways of getting there, or different thoughts on how to get there, which I think is where most tension comes from. Because a lot of, not all, there are some weirdos, but a lot of people generally like want to live like a productive life. But what is that to you?
Yeah.
What is that to another person? It's very different, you know. Someone's idea of a productive life might be to um, be an artist, and another person's might be to be a locksmith.
Right.
And those are going to be very different skill sets, very different ways of looking at the world, you know?
Absolutely. And I think everybody wants to be happy or productive in some kind of
Yeah.
way. There's
Or
very few
fulfilled is probably
people.
the better option, but yeah.
There was I remember there was a YouTuber I watched named Dreg, and he had
Mm-hmm.
a great video at one point where he flipped our assumptions of what philosophy is for on its head.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very fun. The video was he wanted a political system to maximize misery.
Yeah, I pronounce it J-Rag. I don't think there's a correct pronunciation
No.
for it, but I'm aware of what you're talking about. I think CGP Grey actually did a very interesting video or similar video in the sense of like how to maximize human misery, and it was very
Yeah.
much like he had released it during the pandemic, as well as like alongside another video called like Spaceship U,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the idea of like, you know, we're shutting down, we're in like a spaceship, we need to sit and wait for rescue. How do we take the time to, and it was all about like scheduling and like keeping consistent like sleep patterns and exercise and like making sure that getting rid of the omni room, which is the room you
Okay.
do everything in, because
Mm-hmm.
if it's the room you do everything in, you end up doing nothing in
That makes sense.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have dedicated spaces to eat, sleep, play, and work.
That is definitely what happens to me if I have an omni room.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
get any work done.
Yeah.
That's what this room is. This is the work room.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I thought one of the things I thought was interesting about that thought experiment of maximizing misery
Mm-hmm.
is that it reveals that there's actually two separate questions going on. There's a question of what is the goal? Are we trying to maximize pleasure or misery?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe freedom or misery?
Yep.
And then how do we get to that goal?
Yeah.
And they're kind of two separate things. And that for me is foundational also to my theory of democracy, seamless transition.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about liquid democracy.
Okay.
Liquid democracy for me, I've always been inclined towards more direct systems of democracy
Mm-hmm.
because my view is that the point of democracy isn't necessarily that it's the smartest group of people making the decisions.
Yeah.
The point of democracy is that our system should be accountable to people, to our needs. And so there's two questions, like how do you most efficiently, effectively run a government and a society? And the second question is for who?
Yes.
Who are you running this machine for? And so for a while, I looked for different models of ways of improving democracy so that it's just more accountable to the general public. And that's part of what got me interested in liquid democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's like halfway between representative democracy and direct democracy, where you're
Okay.
able to vote on whatever issue you want to directly. But if you don't vote, your vote goes to a delegate of your choice.
Interesting. Um, I'm not too familiar with the concept of liquid democracy in general. Has this been implemented in any like municipality or anything like that, or?
I don't think it's been done for an entire municipal government.
Mm-hmm.
It has been done for corporate governance in a lot
Interesting.
of
Okay.
settings. And there are also politicians in Iceland, which is where the original pirate party that sponsors liquid democracy is
Okay.
from. And the Pirate Party, one of their things, their strategy is that they elect individual candidates to Congress or whatever they have there.
Yeah.
Parliament, probably.
Probably. Yeah.
And their parliament, when they get them elected, they take an oath that they're bound to this application called liquid feedback. And whatever anybody who uses this application within their party votes, that's how their representative votes on a given issue.
Interesting.
And part of my reasoning for being interested in that is also that I'm interested in some of these niche political sects that have started to emerge in the 21st century. There are more people on the left than ever before who are differentiating themselves from liberals, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's more libertarians than ever before. There's more people on the new right that are starting to reject free markets than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's I don't. It's interesting because the I think they've always been there. I think because like the liberal democracy like end of history idea is kind of breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
I think you kind of there's more space for fringe ideas and ideologies to kind of get air now
Yeah.
and not be because to me like a leftist
Mm-hmm.
your viewers don't know that you know this
Fair enough. Yeah.
uh
I'm somewhere
it's
in that vein
yeah
myself. Sort
yeah yeah it's very much like kind of the history of the United States is a history of state suppression.
Yeah.
And so like even if you look at oh goodness who ran in there's a socialist leader that ran in the 1930s and 40s against Roosevelt. Anyway, one of his famous quotes is basically like the American people will take socialism, but they won't take the label.
Yeah.
So you need to outflank
Mm-hmm.
your enemies and basically give them socialism without the label.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true anymore because Zoran Mondani is exists now,
And he's just like, I'm a socialist.
I'm a socialist, and I, as far as any polling is I've seen indicates, is kicking Andrew Cuomo's butt.
Yeah.
Which I am in favor of. I don't like the man. He seems to be odious in a lot of different ways. And I think it's a very interesting time because kind of you can only take so much of the liberals order kind of failing before you fall into apathy or fall into a different system. And I think one of the issues in America today is so many Americans are just apathetic and they don't really know another way to look at the world. And I think it's um well, for me, it's kind of like a leftist job to show apathetic, like capital L liberals in America, a different way of looking at the world, a different way of what the world could be, and show them a positive message for the future, which is why I like Zoran Mandami. He does
Mm-hmm.
the he does that. He does what I just said,
Yeah.
which and um that him coming from DSA, and him being now a national figure that you can point to and basically say, I want to do this or we're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
is a big thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I was a big fan of Bernie before him.
Yeah.
I like that Zoran is younger, a bit more media savvy. I think that's
More
generally a good
charismatic
thing.
somehow.
Oh, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have much competition, right?
No, no.
I mean, you look at the Democrats he's competing with. Even there's not a lot of competition in
No,
terms of
no.
charisma there.
There, it's. I mean, the Democrats, at least how I view them, view themselves as like competent stewards of liberal democracy,
Mm,
and they're just like we'll steer and right the ship, you know, but nothing really needs to change. And I
yeah,
think a lot of people, just because of the friction of where we are
yeah.
and the friction of how capital and democracy are kind of splitting in
Mm-hmm.
my worldview, um, the that is starting to kind of wake people up and making them, because we have before uh, Trump got elected
Mm-hmm.
again, or even kind of continuing this trend, you had a series of leaders that were pro-establishment liberals across the
Mm-hmm.
world losing to right-wing, um, I would call them faux populists.
Yeah.
Like Milei in Argentina, you had Meloni in Italy, you had, um, I mean, France didn't fall, but the French government right now, I'm not too up on it, is in complete disarray. Is
Yeah.
my understanding of it. You had not Boris Yeltsin. He's not British. You had the Muppet hair guy.
Orban was in the mix. I don't remember which
Well,
country he was.
Orban's Orban Erdogan, in Hungary and Turkey are kind of like illiberal democracies. They're a bit different than what I'm describing. But
Okay.
my idea is like you put the people want a populism,
Yeah.
and whether that is a populism for the rich, which I
Mm-hmm.
find is what exists on the right, or a populism for all, which is
Mm-hmm.
what I find exists on like the left, or like left leaning liberal spaces, that subscribe to that ideology, is kind of like what the future is going to give you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, what do you want the future to look like?
I agree. I love that there's hopefully finally some kind of change brewing. What
Yeah.
with the rise of populisms of all kind of different types, you know.
Yeah.
And my general hope is I want to kind of strengthen liberal democracy because I think that in a way liberal democracy is failing, but in another way I like a lot of what we established in terms of bourgeois norms and values. I want more democracy. I want
Mm-hmm.
more liberal in the sense of like freedom of speech. I want people to be really
Yeah.
strongly protected of pluralistic of variety of ideas. And I'm also kind of a populist without adjectives.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help all these different sects. Like for me, Javier Milei, that's a win. Zoran Mamdani, also a win. Just a very different kind of win.
I'll have to agree. I'll have to disagree with you on that.
That's fair.
I'll just have to disagree with you on that. I think it's very much because I think Malay and his ilk all over the kind of Western world is kind of antithetical to liberal democracy
Yeah, in a lot of
in a
ways.
lot of ways. And I think that while you were saying like I want to strengthen liberal democracy, at first my immediate thought was like no, and then I was like, well, actually yes,
Mhm.
because what you were saying about like the capital L, like liberal values of like I would ascribe these values that you kind of get from like liberal capital L, liberal like education
Yeah.
and stuff like that, are good and should be like strengthened. The main issue that I have with like modern day like liberal democracies is the capitalist influence on them,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what uh, it needs to be at least corralled,
Mm.
even in like even in like even if you're just a liberal, you have to recognize that like the corrosive forces of capitalism will slowly eat away over democracies over time, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to protect against that. I would go a step further and just say let's just get rid of these corrosive elements in general
Okay.
and stop having to constantly fight these back.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but still keep the same democratic capital L liberal like social elements.
Yeah, I think I'm largely on the same page, because I would want to get rid of those corrosive elements through dramatic economic transformation,
Yeah.
and I would want to get rid of corruption through transformation of democratic institutions.
Yeah,
Also,
absolutely.
is where I would go. Um, yeah, so I think that brings me to the end of describing my own philosophy. For
Mm-hmm.
full transparency, is there anything else you'd like to say before we round up about the nature of Socrates, or what kind of discussions we have?
I mean, I would. It's. I think we've done very well at describing and kind of showing what Socrates Cafe is like, and just kind of the roundtable nature of it. It's not something that I. We have a good group going on here, and it's something that I enjoy doing. I mean, the only thing that I would actually like to say is something Socrates himself said, which was the unexamined life is not worth living.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is. It's a it's a bit of it's a bit of hit my take everywhere. Where and that is one of the reasons why I do this for my own sake. Um, the only way to know you're wrong is to talk to other people that have different ideas, and the only way to examine your beliefs is to examine them. So
Absolutely.
you have to meet with new people. You have to talk to them.
I think
So
that's a I think that's a good note to end on. The
yeah,
unexamined life is not worth living.
yeah.